Welcome to the KnifeWife podcast. I'm Suze, married to Bob Terzuola. This podcast is about couples who live, love, and work together. It has little to do with knives. Well, here we are again, Bob and Suze. Say hi, Bob.
How are you?
Somehow they let us back in the studio and they're letting us do this podcast again. And I don't know. It seems to be working out.
In the face of impossible odds.
And we dropped our first podcast, and I just want to thank everybody who's written me and told me how funny the first episode was. It was really good to hear because when you record in here, it's sort of, you're yelling into a hole. You don't have any feedback at all. And so that was really nice to hear everybody's. And I look forward to looking at the comments. I haven't looked at the comments online. Anyway, so here I am again. Today I have a guest here, and I remembered as we were driving here that she has some great experience in something we are suffering with in our house right now. We eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, and some are on the counter, and we have a fruit fly problem. And I sort of look like I'm clapping for the fruit flies. I try to kill them by clapping my hands together, and I think they're like, oh, look, she likes us, because I rarely catch one. And I put a sticky thing out, and that didn't work. But anyway, our guest today is Carmelita and Jaramillo, and I've known her for many, many years. And she, when she was doing her undergrad, she had a little fruit fly encounters, and I'll let her say hello, and we'll get into that.
Hi, Carm.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You work with your partner, Greg, and the business is Linder Engineering, and your website address is Linder Labs, and you've had a lot of expertise in different labs. You've had a lot of experience, and one of the things when you were in your undergrad that you did, and we were talking about you in the kitchen the other day because we were having this fruit fly problem, and as I said, the fruit flies were like, oh, she's clapping for us.
Who do we know who's an expert on fruit flies? Let me think for a moment here.
So one time, yes, I remember when you were studying them in the lab, I remember you went to a convention of some sort. Is that right?
Yeah, so every year they host the Drosophila conference, and as we talked about in 2011, that was the 100th conference. So fruit flies have been used for a very long time in the especially genetic scientific community because it's easy to breed, easy to raise, easy to manipulate. So I did work with fruit flies for the last 3 years of my undergraduate education. I did basic science research, so I used the fruit flies to look at gene expression at its very earliest stages, understanding how those early mesoderm cells, as they're called, those are the cells that then go on to become other types of cells, including muscle cells. That's what I was looking at when I was working with the fruit flies.
And
what were the gene expressions? I mean, were they happy? Did they smile? Did they frown? What kind of expression did they have?
Well, some of them had kind of grotesque expressions. Some of the genes that other people worked with in the lab were things called daughterless or flightless or breathless.
Oh, I remember
and the
all
names
this.
Are right. The names are indicative of what happens if you mess with them. The daughterless flies were not able to produce offspring.
Or they only produced sons and they didn't want them.
Yeah, well, now we're looking for Susie's kitchenless fruit flies. See if we can find any of those.
Am I correct? You can tell by just looking at one if it's a male or a female. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the male flies have a much more rounded abdomen, and they also are striped versus the females that have a more pointed abdomen, and they have a solid color. So that's how you tell. It's a lot harder to tell with the fruit flies you're probably encountering because those are natural, what they call the wild type fruit flies that exist out in nature. They're not. Yes, very wild. So they're probably a lot smaller and faster than the very pampered flies that we had in the lab.
Pampered flies?
Pampered
How do you
Well,
pamper a fly?
I mean,
Is it like Kobe beef where they get massaged
by
or
having
what?
lots of fruit around.
Well, I guess.
yes, imagine Kobe yeast meal. Like those gene expression things we talked about.
Yes.
Some of them are temperature dependent. So if we wanted them to do a certain thing, they'd be kept at a certain temperature. In a lot of cases, the genetic crosses had to be very well contained. So in some circumstances, you'd have one male fly with 30 female flies or more. So for the male especially, that was a pretty happy and ideal situation. No natural predators, just having fun and eating
Yes.
all the
Okay.
food you could want.
All right. Well, this is everything I ever wanted to know about fruit flies and more. And I just still am amazed that there were 100 years of conventions that, were there people who had been there like for 40 years? It was like their 40th one. Did they have T-shirts or
Yep.
did they have anything? Was there any swag or anything from this convention?
That would have been so cool. I would have definitely gotten a T-shirt if that was the case. Unfortunately, this particular conference is a little bit more on the serious side, so not many. I've been fruited 100 years kind of thing.
Okay.
But I did actually get to meet the PI, the principal investigator, the director of my lab that I worked in. I did get to meet his advisor. So he had participated in probably close to 40 of these conferences, if not more.
You want him at your parties, right?
I sure do.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, well, thanks for sharing that with us. I just, we thought about you a lot in the last week as we've been, as I say, clapping for the flies. It turns out I'm not very good at, I think they're so light that when I clap my hands together, I blow them away. I'm really good with the kitchen towel, getting them off the cabinets. I can really snap that towel and I'm a killer. But anyway, so now you work in a completely different kind of lab, an electronics lab with Greg. And when you first met him, we've met Greg, first of all, would you say that like you're the fun part of the relationship and he's the serious part? Or are you both equal in that? Because like in our relationship, I am the fun and Bob is the fun police.
Oh, come on.
Yes, he is. We've known Bob to, mix it up and tear it up a couple times. But most of the time, I'm the happy one and he's not so happy. And I'm like singing along with something and he'll say, I hate that song. We were driving the car and he goes, I hate that song. And I said, why? I said, it's about love and happiness. He goes, yeah. And I can see rainbows and unicorns and walking on the beach. I hate that song. I'm like, oh, it's just too happy for you. Let's sing a song about old people dying and dogs dying and watermelon wine and whatever he listens to. Anyway, he likes very sad songs and I like very happy songs. So what would you say about your relationship? As far as that goes.
Well, I would say that we're actually both pretty joyful and playful, but since Greg is the one who kind of has to shoulder the customer service calls, the technical troubleshooting over the phone through email, and he works many more hours just because I'm just not involved in those types of activities, which when, you have an organization that is all across the world can present some really, weird, 3 a.m. calls like, hey, the server's down or whatever. So we're both very playful, but I have more bandwidth to actually be able to like bring some of that playfulness or at least orchestrate the like social part of our lives. That is the fun part. Because I just have more time and bandwidth for it.
Right. So when you first came to the house you now live in, I love this story. Did you get forewarning? I don't remember. Did he warn you that this was going to be in the living room?
Yeah. So claw machines and cats. So on the way to, on the way to Greg's house, the house that we now both live in together, after our first day, he said, by the way, I have a claw machine in the dining room, which is now my luxurious office suite.
Right, which I feel I would have said, well, why are you trying to up the game? You're trying to like be the winner and practice at home, and so that you can, when the next time you go to, I don't know where you go to, Pizza Hut or whatever has claw machines, that you can, you get that prize in the middle and wow, all the children looking. No, that was not it.
That was a pretty that was a pretty typical response from people when we still had the claw machine. So yeah. So I said, all right, well, that's fine. And then he followed that up with, and by the way, my laboratory mascot, my cat, Winston, likes to sleep in the claw machine. So don't be shocked if when we walk in, you see a cat emerge from the prize bin of this claw machine.
As a prize? Would he have been
Yeah.
a prize?
Winston the prize. Yeah.
the greatest prize of all.
Yes.
And sure enough, yes.
I was just wondering, a claw machine is like those little derricks that pick toys up sometimes, but never actually get to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
They eat your money.
Claw machine.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
So he jumped out of the claw machine on cue.
The other claw
Yes.
machine, the cat.
And it was, there are these little flaps, right, on the door to the bin or whatever where you get the prize. So he very gracefully slinked himself out, emerged from his lair of treasures
His lair.
to
Claw
come be
lair.
Fred.
So what was Greg doing with the machine? Because we got to,
Yep.
he's got a sense of humor, but he's not crazy. There's a reason the machine was there.
Right. It was not for practicing or fun and games. He's actually not a gambler at all, so definitely not for practice. He was building this radio frequency identification apparatus to fit into the prize bin because this company that had contracted him wanted to, instead of toy type prizes, they wanted to have these rolls of tickets.
Right. Many
that you
places you
could-
take children to, they collect their tickets. Right.
Exactly. So there were rolls of various sizes and values. So they wanted to be able to just have the claw drop these rolls of tickets into the bin, and for this RFID machine to be able to tell you what the value was and just give you a little printout of how many tickets you earned
Okay.
to take up to the counter.
Okay. Yeah. The tickets, they've changed over the years from when I took my kids were 11 years apart. So they changed in 11 years. And then when I took my grandson, they were giving little receipts like you get at the grocery store. And that was not nearly as fun as having a wad of 1,000 tickets in your hand that you could go buy prizes that were worth 12 cents. But anyway, it was a
Right.
big whip for kids. And I get it. That's fun. But okay. So the machine, as you said, is moved now. He figured it out. He did it. And
Yep. So that company was bought, and so the person who was the owner just didn't have any work for Greg anymore, and so the claw machine was sold to somebody on Craigslist who wanted it as a hobby, kind of fixer-up sort of thing.
oh, sure.
So
Sure.
yeah,
If I could, I'd have a pinball machine in our house. I definitely would have a pinball machine in our house. I love pinball machines. I always have. Or foosball.
Mm.
Like
foosball's
in Friends, they had foosball, and then they're like, why didn't I think of that? Yeah. So anyway, well, I love that story. So you sort of ride an interesting rail in your job because not only do you live, love, and work together, but not everyone really knows that you're there, right? You sort of have a ghost presence or like an elf that gets things done. They don't know how it gets done or...
yeah, fairy godmother kind of sort of thing. Yeah.
And I think even a company, when they bought Greg's company, they wanted to give you a contract and have you work for them. But you said, no, thank you. I work for Greg.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. So almost 3 years ago, there were two separate business entities that Greg owned, Solar SCADA and Linder Engineering. Solar SCADA is all of the data monitoring hardware and technology for solar energy sites. And we're talking commercial utility kind of stuff, no
I
residential.
know Bob was driving him crazy. He was saying, look at this on my phone. I can monitor our solar panels on our house. I know how much we're getting out. I know how much we're producing. I know how much SDG&E is not paying us for what we're producing. But anyway, he and Greg really got into it. And Bob's like, well, I should get one of those. And he says, well, it's kind of industrial, right? It's not really for homes. Yeah.
I mean, you could have one if you really wanted to geek out and spend a lot of money. But most people don't want to do that for their in-home solar panels.
Yeah. The app on my phone is pretty much working just fine. Okay. Anyway, so So you didn't go do that. You didn't go work for that company. And I understand people have asked me to design patterns for knife companies that Bob isn't producing a knife with. And I said, no, for right now, I'm going to just stick to knives that are produced, that are Bob's designs that my patterns go on. Bob leaves me. Bob runs away with some young thing or whatever. The door's open. I'll design them for anybody, but not right now. So anyway, do you have, there's just the two of you, and you used to have Winston. He's no longer with you, I know. So when you have something big or a celebration or a Christmas party, what do you do? What's it like? I mean, we have a whole team, so now we take everybody out for brunch, and we did a great thing this year. Everybody had the word of the year, and I had mugs made with all their words on them. That was a nice thing, but it's just the two of you. So what do you do?
Well, I think my favorite quote company Christmas celebration was 3 years ago. And Greg, especially since he doesn't have any family close by, and he has never really himself celebrated Christmas very much, I decided to make a Christmas surprise for him. So I, over the course of a few months leading up to Christmas, collected just a few little small thoughtful gifts to wrap, kept them in various hiding places, which in our house/world headquarters is very challenging because we, don't have very much space to put things. So a friend of ours helped me stash like a little tabletop Christmas tree in her apartment until the time came, and Winston was still with us. So Winston and I stayed up very late. I told Greg to go to bed. I wasn't really feeling tired, so I spent the whole night decorating the living room. And we have these really cute penguin Christmas sheets that I pulled out.
Penguin. We say penguin around here. Because in the South, they say penguin. So now every time someone says penguin, I have like Tourette's. I go, penguin. All right, go on. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
That's cute. So I just kind of turned the, our boardroom where we do puzzle fighting, and I'm sure we'll touch on that later. Yeah. All of our board meetings. So I turned that into this like little mini Christmas wonderland. And when Winston was very helpful in pulling things off the table and getting into the Christmas presents. But I managed to pull it together right in time for him to wake up to a Christmas wonderland.
Good job, Santa. Good job.
So that year I gave him a World's Best Boss mug, along with other just small little cute things. So we spent the morning hanging out in this little, Christmas cove, I guess, that I built, and we had breakfast together, which we normally don't do. Breakfast is usually our time to get caught up on what needs to be done and get ready for the day. So it was very special for us to share breakfast together that day.
Nice. So you told me about a Christmas party you went to. Was this the same friend that had the tree, or a different one?
No. So I have a circle of friends, two of whom I know very well, and I'm very close friends with them. But one of them is what people like to call a stray cat collector. She's such an extrovert. She can make conversation and friends with anybody, anytime, anywhere. She is completely unfazed by the social anxieties that plague other people, especially introverted people. So she has a lot of friends that she's collected over the years. And anytime she has social gatherings, the invitation goes out to all of us, whether we're stray cats or more extroverts, that we all get the invitation. So this Christmas party was at her house last year, and an acquaintance from this social circle, our mutual friend I've known for over 5 years at this point. So I knew this acquaintance, but not particularly well. I basically just saw her at these social gatherings, like birthday parties, Christmas parties. So she and I overlapped enough that she knew that there was a boss, Greg, in my life, and a partner, Greg, in my life. And especially when I talk about work stuff, because it's just kind of fun for me to talk about my handsome boss who is so brilliant and can do so many things, who I enjoy working with so much. But I guess we just didn't have, I didn't talk enough, at least in her presence, for her to realize that Greg the partner and Greg the boss were the same person.
Because stray cats can't always put two and two together. Right.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So last year's Christmas party, which was a huge blast, there was a Christmas cookie contest. I took
Eating or making?
Both. I did not. I burned the bizcochitos that I was supposed to take. So,
Nice.
yep. So I went to a trusty panaderia up the street to get some traditional Mexican treats for people. But anyway, this was a particularly jubilant Christmas party. People were having a great time and imbibing, and this acquaintance, who's normally a very formal, very reserved person, we found ourselves alone in our mutual friend's kitchen, and she just blurted out, "I'm involved with my boss. I think you are too. Can I ask you for some advice?" So it took me a moment to pull myself together and say, well, those people are the same person. Greg, my boss, and Greg, my partner, are the same person. She looked completely mortified. But then she started laughing and said, well, I haven't told anybody else about this, so I guess I just needed to say it out loud, if nothing else. Thanks anyway. And we had a nice conversation. Probably the most in-depth conversation I've ever had with this person after years of just kind of passing by one another. And apparently things are quite well and quite happy in her life now. So
good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, we know we do that too. We were filming Bob's Sharp Life, and I had the whole crew there. There were lots of jokes about me, since I was the producer and the director, that the talent was sleeping with me, or that, that's how you get to be where he is, that, he's whatever. And I was just like, yeah, right. And so there's a lot of, right, Bob? There were a lot of jokes about that during that shoot.
There certainly were.
And, well, what can I say?
That's how I rose to the top.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Anyway, well, that's a great
with
story.
My producer.
I want to hear if you can do a Reader's Digest condensed version of your PlayStation boardroom meetings that you guys have. I think that's great.
Sure.
That's a generation, that's not something Bob and I would do. So I love hearing about, what you young folk do.
Yeah, so this game is from my childhood, and I didn't think I'd ever play this game again, but I happened to mention it to Greg, and he went out and bought it, and we both enjoyed playing it together so much that it just sort of became the default. Like, he'd come in from the lab and say, man, I just had a terrible phone call with a really difficult client. I need to decompress a little bit. Let's go to the boardroom and play some puzzle fighting. So this puzzle
Fighter
fighting game,
2 Turbo? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you do? What is it?
Yeah. So imagine like a kung fu fighting style game mixed with Tetris. So you're destroying. It's like Candy Crush, where you're supposed to destroy colored blocks.
Okay.
And the more blocks you destroy, that's how you add more blocks to your opponent's screen. And whoever gets to the top first loses. So
so that's what you guys do. You sit down and play that game, and it decompresses you. I could see that.
It's just such a powerful way to dissipate frustration, because you just really fall into a flow, and especially you can tell who is ranting versus who's listening, because the ranter tends to flow, like get into this flow state where they're just really not paying attention to the blocks, and they tend to do better. So a lot of great engineering, especially on Greg's part, has come from these sort of sandbox boardroom sessions where we're just talking about different things.
Yeah, turning off one side of your brain so the other part can thrive. It happens. Bob does that a lot. He used to play Angry Birds. He doesn't play that anymore.
Yeah, I beat them all.
Yeah, he beat all the birds. And I don't do that. I go out in the garden. That's my decompress. But so I always ask this to all our guests. What is something you would tell other couples who are new to working and running a business together? What would be your advice?
I would say the number one thing is to really prioritize like play and joy. I think creativity is woven into that too. So much of our, like requisition requests when I need supplies or whatever from Greg are not just requisition requests. There's always some goofball item that I'll sneak in there just to give him a laugh.
Like a unicorn or something. Here's some wire and unicorn.
Yeah. And there's just, nothing is ever just what it is for us. Like, our morning, let's call it, debrief before the day gets started. We make breakfast together and we'll talk about things that have to get done for the day. And we really call that like the breakfast dance, because we're doing it together, we're having fun, we're laughing. So that I think is very critical to make sure that you balance, because there will be a lot of long hours and difficult circumstances. Especially, I mean, we live together and work out of our home, so our lives are highly intertwined, and there needs to be a way to like dissipate the hard work, the grit, the grind with some levity.
Yeah, and play is so important. I mean, now they're discovering this, that adults need to play as well as children. And I've always been playful. I love to play. In fact, I'd rather play than do anything else.
That's for sure.
Yeah, put me at the kids' table. I'm happy.
Yeah.
And where is Greg right now? Because I know he's not there.
Right, he's in Oslo right now. The solar skated business was bought by a Norwegian company called Skyfree, or Skifree, if you're pronouncing it in Norwegian.
Sure.
Yeah, so he is at one of their corporate board meetings.
All right. Well, hey, Greg, thanks for letting us borrow your other half. Thank you, Carm, for being with us. We could tell stories. We have lots of stories. I mean, she's been in my life longer than you've not been in my life now. I mean, it's, I don't know how old you are now. I don't even want to know, because I feel very old if I say that. But, we have lots of stories, but I really appreciate you sharing, things that Bob and I would not necessarily sit down and play a video game. We would not have a claw machine in our house. And that is what is endearing about you and Greg, is that it's a creative as well, and he's very inventive. He's really an inventor, right?
Right.
Fun. Great. Anything, Bob, do you have to say before we sign off?
I will say that I was introduced to Angry Birds by you. If you'll remember, you said, "Oh, here's a game. You're going to love the physics of this whole thing."
Yes, a lot of catapulting going on.
Going on.
Yeah, but once I'd catapulted about 10 birds, I was like, it's enough. I don't do well with video games. I don't run and jump well with my thumbs either. So, but that's okay. I'm old. So I don't mind. Anyway, well, Carm, anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
I had a great time. Thanks for having me, and I'm really looking forward to the other episodes.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Carm.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Bye for now, and don't burn any more of those biscochitos, baby.
I'll try not to.
Okay. All right. Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing, please share this with a friend and subscribe where you listen to podcasts. Please support our efforts through Patreon at TheKnifeWife, and for all Terzawola goodness, go to terzawola.net. And remember, if you're not laughing, you're not living. Comments and questions can be made on Instagram at The KnifeWife Podcast or our Facebook group, The KnifeWife Podcast. And if you're a couple who work together and would like to be on our podcast, tell us about yourself with an email at eccentricsues.com or terzawola.net.